Hi, everyone. This is Jason. Welcome back to the show. Joining me today is Leah. You know her online as Girl Gone Crypto. You can find her on Twitter at girlgone_crypto. And be sure to subscribe to Leah's YouTube channel at Girl Gone Crypto. I'm going to include a link in this video so that you can subscribe. But make sure you watch this video first. Hi, Leah. How are you?
I'm good, Jason. Thanks so much for having me on. It's great to finally get to meet you face to face since we've been chatting online for a while.
I know. Well, you know, it's funny because it happens a lot at the conferences where you've spoken to people a lot, but then you're walking right past them at the conference. You don't even think twice about it, you know, like, and then someone says, "Aren't you?" So I like doing this so that we actually get to know each other. So when we meet in IRL, it's not a surprise, you know. But yeah,
100%.
yeah. And I've been following you for a while, and I'm very impressed with your videos.
Thank
My
you.
favorite video is the one you did with Lynn Albrecht because I love Lynn. She's so great. My question about that was when you got together, because I saw that you were in a hotel room. Was that your room or her room?
It was our room. We were roommates.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
She's
Wow.
so great. I had the opportunity to meet her for the first time in Philadelphia at Anarchadelphia. I was speaking there, and so she was there, and we ended up in a whole big house together. They put a bunch of the speakers all in like this big Airbnb, and so we got to hang out quite a bit. And so then when I told her I was going to World CryptoCon in Vegas, she was like, "Hey, are you staying on the Strip? Do you have an extra bed?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. Come on, let's do it again." So
Oh, wow.
it was yeah, it was really fun just to get to hang out with her. She's amazing, and
Nice,
you know,
nice.
obviously anything we can do to help spread the word about
I
Ross, right?
know. Yeah, I met her a few times. I met her in San Francisco, and then I met her again in Vegas, and she just seems like such a nice person. And you know, and guys, if you want to learn more about the Free Ross campaign, go to freeross.org and sign the petition. I believe they're over 300,000 signatures so far, I believe.
I think it's close. I think that they just passed the 250,000 mark, and it's been growing. So they might be at 300 by now. But yeah, it's getting close to that, I think.
Yeah, I just wish we had politicians that listened. You know,
Right.
it's just, and I remember when they first rolled out that website and people were putting all these petitions together, and if they got over a certain limit, it went to the White House. And I'm just like, I don't think they care. They barely know what's going on in their own house, and you think they're gonna care about some guy from crypto?
I know. And that's what's really sad is when you tell any just like normal breathing human being the story, they're like, "Oh, wow, that's crazy. That doesn't make sense." But then when it comes down to actually, you know, kind of working with these politicians and trying to see things change, that's when it just gets complicated and that human element just goes out the window right there. So
Well, and I mean, you think about it. When you tell someone the kind of sentence Ross received, everybody's like, "Is that legal?" Be like,
right.
"Yeah, you'd be surprised." They didn't just throw him under the bus. They threw him under the bus and ran over him a few times. I mean, it's double life sentence plus 40. I mean, come on, you know,
For first time offender,
for a first time
nonviolent.
offender, exactly. But it's just amazing that, you know, when you get into the space, and I want to hear about how you first got into crypto. But when you first get into the space, it seems like this abstract technology, financial thing. But then once you stay in here, you become a part of a community, right?
Absolutely.
So how did you find crypto? How did you get into cryptocurrency?
Yeah, so I really got into crypto more in kind of early 17. I had heard of it. I had friends that were miners. I've got a really good friend that's been a miner since 11. So I've like heard about it, but it was like you said, it was this kind of abstract thing where I kind of knew what it was, but it didn't impact my life in any way. I didn't really feel a strong reason to look into it, except for my friends being like, "Oh, you should buy some," and I'm like, "Oh, you know, whatever." You know, I wish I'd listened to them. But I actually stumbled across, I don't know if you're familiar with Steemit or the Steem
Oh yeah,
blockchain.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. So I stumbled across that in early 2017, early to mid 2017, and kind of started poking around on there, and then was like, this is kind of cool, actually. I was at the time doing a couple of other like side hustles, if you will. And I was like, I'll just try posting something. Maybe I'll make some money on it. And so I don't say I'm a very good musician, but I do like to play a few different instruments. And so I was like, I'm gonna make a little ukulele cover. And it did really well. And then I posted another ukulele cover and it did really well. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. What is this thing?
We might have something here.
I know. And so I just started posting more, and it was just this like wild thing. And I always say that was kind of my rabbit hole, like entryway, gateway drug, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
because then I was like, well, how does this work? Like, where did this money actually come from? Did it come out of thin air? Like, how does, and then, okay, now that I have my first piece of crypto, like, what do I do with it? What is this thing
Right.
called an exchange? And so I think that physically having crypto in my hand, and that's what kind of caused me to want to learn more. And even though for the last few years I was mostly just kind of posting fun content, like I said, I would do different music things, or I would just write kind of free write blog posts, or I would just do whatever. Being on the Steam blockchain and just being around a lot of people that were talking about cryptocurrency, it just continued to pique my interest, and I continued to learn more and more. So I think that the last few years has just been kind of this fun, really like slow growth of creating that community, like you said, creating friends in the crypto space, and just kind of learning more and more. And it was just this really wild thing where I kept getting requests to speak at crypto conferences because people were following me on Steam. And I was like, well, I'm kind of new to crypto, but they're like, no, like just come. And so I've been speaking at crypto conferences for a few years. And so just started Girl Gone Crypto, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, somewhere in there,
Okay.
kind of late summer. Cause I was like, obviously this is something I'm really excited about, and there's momentum for me in this kind of space. And so maybe I'll just start a channel about crypto and see what happens. So it's been really a lot of fun.
Nice, nice. So how do you like the experience of being a crypto content creator so far? I mean, you have over 500 subscribers, so obviously you're moving up. So how do you think it's gone so far?
It's really interesting. It's a lot of fun. The nice thing about the crypto space is I feel like there's just an unending amount of possible things to talk about, or to look at, or projects going on, or different blockchains. And but with that, I think comes a certain level of almost like uh, being even more conscious than I've ever been with content creation. Because before, when I was just doing kind of fun things, it didn't matter. I would like do a ukulele video, I would do whatever. But now that there's like financial implications in the sense of, if I give a platform to a particular project, even just by interviewing them, I'm not saying like sponsored or anything, but just by literally having them on my channel, and someone decides to invest or something, and then it doesn't go well, then I feel a certain, like, so
Right.
I feel like I'm really cautious about the content I create, who I have on my channel, what tutorials and different things I do. Because even if I'm not saying, like, I always say, do your own research, but I just want to be so careful that I'm doing a lot of due diligence before I mention anything on my channel. So I would say that it's really fun, and the community is amazing. And I think there's so many cool things happening in the space, but I definitely, it's a little bit more like, I don't want to say guarded, but I'm a little bit more like, I think aware
Aware.
of what
Yeah.
I'm doing,
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I mean, that's one reason why, I tell people that, if anyone tries to sell you anything, you need to stay away from those people.
Right.
It's one thing to tell you about it, but something totally different when they say you should put your money in this. I mean, we already have it hard because we tell people to buy Bitcoin, which is technically the same thing, but it's like, well, all right.
I
Um,
know, that's the one thing that I feel good being like, just buy Bitcoin. You know what I mean?
just buy Bitcoin.
Buy Bitcoin. And obviously, like, I hold various altcoins as well. I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist by any sense, but like, I also, like, I don't give financial advice, and the trajectory, like, a lot of altcoins don't have the best, track record. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but Bitcoin, I feel more confident telling, let's say, like, my friends or family or people, like, hey, that in the long run, that's probably your safest bet in terms of like long-term ROI.
Yeah. Well, I got my brother into crypto,
Nice.
and we the first I sent him like $10 worth of sats, and
Nice.
I gave him had him download the Edge wallet, and
Cool.
he was like, okay, so now what? I was like, well, now you have Bitcoin. He's like, well, what do I do with it? Like, you want to? I was like, you can buy something with it if you want, or you can just hang on to it, because the way that it works is because it's volatile. You might look in there tomorrow and it'd be $12 instead of just 10. He said, yeah, but it could be 8 tomorrow too, right? I was like, that's true, but we're hoping that doesn't happen.
Right.
Well, and I mean, you think that once you start making these type of videos, you become a voice for crypto, because people see us and they hear us, and we're always talking about it. I always have my Bitcoin t-shirts on, and of course people want to know about Bitcoin. You're basically a walking billboard. So it leads to my next question for you about being that kind of representation. Have you had experience where like a stranger walks up to you and says, hey, you're that crypto girl, right? Or something like that?
Maybe not a stranger on the street, but that'll be cool. The day that happens, I'll text you and be like, Jason, it happened. But I definitely do have more people that I know asking me advice. And what's really actually interesting is a lot of my like kind of community and followers and people that I'm friends with on Steam have started asking more crypto stuff, because I think there's a lot of creatives on Steam that they don't necessarily understand a lot about crypto, but they are artists and musicians and poets, and they're posting their their content on there and earning crypto. And so that's actually where I've seen more questions come from is but I'm still like, hey, I am not a financial advisor, and I'm always growing in my own knowledge of how things work. I never claim to be the most technical person in the room, and I think you have to. And like I've been on a few panels at different conferences, and I'm like, one thing that I know for a fact is that you cannot BS your way through anything, and you wouldn't want to, because when everyone in the audience like understands a particular segment of blockchain technology better than you do, like they're gonna know if you're like trying to
right, yeah. Well,
so
I mean,
yeah.
and that happens because a lot of us who are in the space now aren't the people who created it, right? We're the people who came into it. We're telling people about it. We're basically evangelists for it. And it raises an interesting question between the people who created it and the people who embraced it after the fact. Like who has more weight, more I guess you'd call it cultural currency or something like that. Like is Vitalik more important than Naomi Brockwell or something like that, right? It's that question. Like whose voice is stronger. I think that as content creators, our voice actually has more pull, because people wouldn't know that person exists if we didn't say anything about it. You had a person on, his name was Paul, I can't pronounce his last name, starts with a D.
Oh, Democritu.
Right.
Yeah.
So if it weren't for your videos, I would have never known who he was. I would have never known he had books. I didn't know he, spoke to Craig Wright or whatever, and I found that out because of you. So your voice has more weight for me than his voice, right? Because you were the gateway, and that's just how I feel about it. It's an interesting situation we find ourselves in 2020. But and let me point out, that was a great interview.
Oh, thank you.
And I again, I love your content. So I'm definitely going to start sharing out your videos to the crypto Twitter and everything. So
no, I appreciate that. I think that is a really interesting question. And I think that people that are kind of the more like, I think that there are lots of different roles within the space, and we don't all need to fit within the same mold, right? Like there's people that are kind of the OG, the early devs, the early creators, and they aren't necessarily always the best at the communication. And so when it's great that you have content creators and people that help bridge that gap and help bring awareness. And, I don't think that it even necessarily needs to be like, I don't know, like a competition or one or the other, right? Because I think that we all just kind of have slightly different roles. And that's what I think is great about just content creation in general, is like, this is not an oversaturated space. In fact, I think that there is, for people that are wanting to become crypto content creators, I think there's a lot of space to, add your own personality into it and to kind of build a community around you of people that like your content. And,
Right.
And different people will get different things out of that, vitality. Like different people, as they interview different of those like OG people that we're talking about, like they'll just get different pieces of information and different perspectives. And so I think that having lots of different people interviewing some of these important people in this space is actually like really awesome,
Yeah, and you're right about that. I mean, it's like you have certain exceptions, like Werner Mani is an exception because he was on television, so he knows how to present himself. And he worked in the Bitcoin Cash space and Cointext project, so he knows the technology and he knows how to represent himself. He knows how to convey his message to the audience. And hopefully moving on, the further we get down the road on this, we'll have more people like that who can explain to us in a clear, not ones and zeros way what's going on and how we can how we can use it. So I wanted to also get your opinion on something that he said. And I did a few videos in the past about bringing more people into the space. And he then pointed out in one of his interviews he just did about the reason we need more women in crypto. That there are a lot of women in crypto, but it's like, geez, what, 1 to 10 the ratio,
Right.
something like that. So it's like, well, how do we do that? Like, in your opinion, how do we do that? Because we already have a movement to bring more women into STEAM, and crypto fits into STEAM because it's technology. So and math, quite frankly. So what do you think? How do we bring more women and just people in general, but especially how do we bring more women into the space? What do you think?
Well, I think that that's kind of it's a little bit tricky, but one thing that I kind of bring this back to my own example of, even though I had heard of crypto before, I joined Steam, I didn't have any real reason to look into it. And to be honest, people still don't really have a reason that they need to learn about it. And so until we have it where people either actually like own their first bit of crypto somehow and they're like, whoa, this is gone up in price, or it's going down and I'm watching it and like they somehow get engaged, or like I had that experience with Steam where I decided to start making content and that kind of propelled me into the space. Like, I think that if you're just going through your everyday life and you have no reason to, that's always going to be a pain point. That's going to be a little bit of a struggle, because we can say, hey, it's amazing. And they're like, I'm busy. Like, maybe I'm like a mom, I got 2 kids, I'm running, I'm doing things, like
I'm not
not
worried
going to sit
about
down and
Bitcoin.
worry about, I'm not worried about Bitcoin. So like, I think that's part of it. And then I think that part of it is kind of that like the social norms, right? Like, I think that in general, and obviously like every human being is different, but like I think women like tend to like travel in packs and they're social creatures and they like to be like part of the group. And so I think that this isn't like the best like option, but like as it just continues to grow and they start to hear more and more of their friends talking about it, then it suddenly becomes like cool, or it becomes like something that they are aware of and familiar with. And so that's more of a long-term, like just a really slow, natural kind of progression type of thing. But
Right.
I do think that makes a difference. The research shows that you have to hear about something, I think like at least 7 times before it even really starts to stick. And so I think that kind of comes to the whole, like, just having these micro moments with the people that you are around. Like, so I talk about Bitcoin with my friends, and even though they're not necessarily like, they haven't bought Bitcoin yet, or they're not doing, they're not really involved, like the fact that they've heard me talking about it, now when they have another friend talk about it or they hear it on the news, they're going to maybe perk up a little bit more. And
Right.
it kind of starts this kind of really like slow, more natural progression.
So do you think it's just a matter of just talking about it more and letting it get out into the public? space that it's just a matter of time before people start showing up?
I think that helps, but again, I think coming back to the first point of like it needs to somehow be part of their life or be something that they view as being worth their time looking into and being valuable. And so, how did the tech boom start moving into people's lives, right? Like that might be a similar thing to kind of look at. Like, we didn't all used to have computers, and then we didn't, all have email, and then we didn't all have smartphones, and like,
Now we
as
do.
right, like
Now
as
we all do.
we all do. Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think that it'll be kind of interesting to see, how this progression goes, but you need to have it be something that is in their life for whatever reason.
Well, and it also has to be useful. I mean, yay,
Yeah.
I have Bitcoin on my phone, but now what? you know. And I
Right.
mean, and I saw on your one thing I also like about your your presence on Twitter is you say you're crypto agnostic. And I think where we have our shortcomings is the whole maximalist thing. Like I'm not a maximalist. I'm just here for what works. So I mean I've had Bitcoin, I've had Bitcoin Cash, I've had EOS and whatever. And it's just, does it work? And can I use it without a third party? That should be why we're all here, not to raise the flag of one over another. It just seems that we get lost in that sometimes.
No, I agree. I think that there's definitely a lot of tribalism and people are like, oh, you like that or you're like that. And, even like, XRP tends to be the butt of the joke everywhere, which I understand why, but also like I think that, in terms of if we're looking at a community in crypto, they kind of, they've got a pretty strong one, to be honest.
Yeah, they
So
do.
like, when I say crypto, I'm crypto agnostic, I really do mean that. Like I can see I can look at both the pros and cons and be like, okay, like a lot of people don't like EOS, but a lot of people love EOS, right? And like understanding those reasons why and being like, okay, but there's value,
Right.
in
And you can
that.
do
And
things with it.
exactly. And so kind of like you said, like, why are we here, right? Like, I think that if we could all kind of come back to that mindset of like, why do we even care about this at all, then that would probably help a lot of that kind of tribalism that you see. But I do also understand a lot of people have been burned. The 2017 ICO boom, a lot of people, they felt cheated, and they were, right? Like there were different coins that just were pumped and dumped, and that leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And I think that created probably a lot more Bitcoin maximalists than there might have been before.
Right.
Because they're like,
I mean,
I'm done.
to be fair, and to your point, there were a lot of crap being developed in that 2016, 2017 space, which were solely pump and dump schemes. I mean, that's just true. I mean, you don't have it as badly now as you did then, but they're still there. And you feel free to call them out, because some of this stuff is junk. And it's just, that's why we say, I'm not going to tell you to buy that. Just buy Bitcoin. Not even want to get into all that. Just buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, and so that's where I think that when people are like Bitcoin only, I'm like, but it's like, yes, it's our king, but it's kind of like our fat old slow king. Like, like there's so many other like faster blockchains out there. So I think that, it's kind of like putting blinders on that there can't be better solutions that get developed. And so I think from an investment standpoint, like, yeah, Bitcoin probably is your best long-term ROI, but from a like usability standpoint, I think that there's a lot of other blockchains that can offer a lot of good.
Faster. Yeah. Well, I mean, as much as people who are into Bitcoin want to argue it, Bitcoin Cash is actually faster than Bitcoin is. I mean, and it's meant to be, but good luck putting that on Twitter.
Right.
Feel free to be spammed into oblivion, but it's true. I mean, if we're being honest, and at the end of the day, it's not about what the crowd feels, it's about what you feel. If this works better for you, this is what you use. I mean, plain and simple.
One thing I'm kind of curious, like, I don't know, like what you think about this, but I feel like a trend that I'm seeing more and more are projects that call themselves decentralized but have central components, like centralized components to them. And
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of comes back to the like, why are we here, right? Like, and so I understand, and I feel like a lot of these projects and dApps and different things are saying like, oh, but you need to have some level of centralization for a good UI. But I don't know, that like it alarms me a little bit that there seems to be this like acceptance of centralization within crypto projects.
Well,
But
I
I
mean,
kind of
that's
understand both
the,
sides too. I don't know.
yeah, and I've heard that as well. I mean, that's the argument that a lot of people have about, platforms like D Live,
Yeah.
Tron, and even Ethereum, really. And for Ethereum, though, it's not so much that the platform itself is decentralized. It's that a lot of its weight in the space is dependent on Vitalik.
Mm.
So if something like a few years ago, there was a hoax that he died and the price of Ethereum crashed. So it's like, okay, if it's that easy to wreck your crypto, how decentralized could you possibly be?
Mm.
And I think though, and this is my personal opinion, the exchanges are the reason why stuff like that are able to happen. You can't dump a price if you can't trade it. And to me, it's similar to forex trading, where you trade one currency for another,
Yeah.
and the value of that currency goes down. When you hear bad news on TV, the stock market reacts to it. I mean, we just saw it today with
Right.
the whole thing in Iraq. The
World War
price of
Three.
oil spiked, right? So
Right.
it's like, and we're going into World War III apparently.
You're right.
It's Mad Max next week. It's just so. But I mean, it's that. So when your currency is able to be moved like that on just FUD, right?
Mm.
I don't know. I think we have to reevaluate how decentralized you actually are.
And do you think so? You mentioned like the exchanges, but don't we want people to have quick access to their funds? Or, so you're just more saying if like one entity holds such a high percentage of the value of a coin, that's where the issue
Well,
is.
take for example, today is let's see, it's the 3rd of January. Today is Proof of Keys Day.
Right.
Right. Now, the idea of proof of keys is to take your Bitcoin and crypto off of the exchanges and prove that you have the keys to control them. So sometimes, and hopefully it's not going to happen today, but some exchanges can't survive that. So,
Right.
and when the exchange goes down, you see the price of these cryptos go down too, because I believe it was when Quadriga, the one in Canada, the guy
Oh
died and his
yeah.
laptop. Well,
Oh,
you
that was
saw what that.
crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then it didn't really do much to the price of Bitcoin, but I remember when CZ was talking about rolling back the Bitcoin blockchain when they got hacked, and people freaked out. It's like, what do you mean you're going to roll it back? And that sent shockwaves through the space, even though whether or not he's capable of actually doing it is debatable. But, it was just something someone said, and it just rattled everybody's nerves. So I think the ability to, and there's one reason why I like Edge and I like Shapeshift and Exodus, because you can change your cryptos in the wallet. You don't have to send it to CZ or whoever to facilitate that for you. And if you think about it, it's kind of doing the trusted third party, right? You're trusting that exchange works, and when you say send it back to this wallet, it actually happens. I don't know if we want to be doing that, because it flies in the face of, once again, why we're all here.
Absolutely. And it's scary, like for people that don't understand that it's like, oh, I bought Bitcoin, but it's not an exchange. Like, yeah, but if that exchange closes their doors, like what's she gonna do? And they don't necessarily get to that level of understanding. Like, and it's funny because I was like, well, if someone went through all the work to buy Bitcoin, they probably understand that. And it is not accurate. Like I've definitely, like even my, one of my brothers who is a very intelligent person, I was like, oh yeah, so what wallet? He's like, wallet? He's like, oh, I just have it on, like, I don't know, like Bittrex or something. And I was like, what? I was like, you're getting a Ledger Nano for Christmas, but like, and
Well,
so, yeah,
yeah.
it's important to talk about so people are aware, you know?
Well, and I think because I mean, you exchanges have quote unquote wallets, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think people think it's the same thing, and it's really not. You know, it's one thing to have a wallet that's like a Coinbase wallet. I refuse to put any crypto in a Coinbase wallet because
Yeah.
I'm just sure they're going to start locking people out one day, and I'm just like, you know what? Nope, not me.
Yep, exactly.
So it's interesting. So Lea, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. And once again, everyone, you can find her on Twitter at girlgone_crypto. And make sure you subscribe to Lea's YouTube channel. And I'll put a link in the description and I'll tag it in the video. So Lea, once again, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been really fun to hang out, Jason.